Hi, I'm Susan from Bees. Thanks for joining me. I have another 70-degree day on January 6th, and yes, we're about to go down to 30 degrees and bump around for the next week or two of January. So I'm out feeding dry pollen today and closing up some entrances. So I figured I'd give you a short apiary tour and hopefully answer some of the questions that I've seen over the past year that I've seen on my YouTube. So let's go. So in my apiary, I use only mediums, and that is one due to the weight, because as I get older I don't want to lift deeps. I got out of deeps really early because I wanted to interchange and pull brood up into higher reaches. It is easier to manipulate if everything's all the same size equipment. And also the weight is really a big factor because a deep can be really heavy, and I don't want to have to lift that, whereas a medium is something I can lift. When I can move brood from, if you're not using an excluder, I can move brood from the top down to the bottom, or from the bottom down to the top, wherever I want it, and I don't have to worry about the size of my frames. It tends to be more conducive to my style of beekeeping. This is an example of my mediums only. Definitely a brood. She could be in a brood here, and this would be honey. I don't always use queen excluders. I have started, and I like it for keeping, for two reasons. I like keeping a queen down below a queen excluder so that I can pull honey with no eggs. I also kind of like it because I almost have a feeling that if a queen is given full run, she kind of peters out a little bit quicker. But if she's given a limited run, she may not. While she can lay 2,000 eggs a day, she's not laying 2,000 eggs a day if she's already filled 2 brood boxes. But in this situation, in a medium, this brood box, 1, 2, and 3, that is the equivalent size of 2 deeps. So this is 2 deeps. I could put an excluder up here and she has just as much room. And some people are going to just 1 deep, but you know, that's a huge brood nest. And if you put the excluder here though, in the second, just above the second medium, she tends to utilize the bottom medium. Whereas if you put it up top in the third, this bottom medium tends to be some pollen and a few things, but she doesn't always utilize it. So it's just something to consider, you know, working with your queens, watching how they work and how they act. But I don't always use queen excluders. I use them for a lot of different purposes. But this year I did, or this past year I did use them to watch my queen longevity. It seemed to really work out pretty well. some of you have noticed that I don't paint my hives. I don't paint them, but I do linseed them. So they are all pine. They are, you know, commercially made, but we buy them in pieces and put them together ourselves. But I do linseed the boxes, and that keeps a protective coating. It doesn't give the, what I guess maybe some figure is the protection of white to reflect any of that sun. They turn darker with age, but one of the nice things about the linseed is that I can then come out in the cool weather and re-linseed them while the bees are kind of confined with the cool weather. It doesn't make the boxes stick together, whereas if you were to, like, say, try to paint them out in the field, it would stick the boxes together. I also don't like paint chipping, and I want to take propolis, and I don't like the VOC of paint. There's a number of reasons why I don't. All of my boxes are sitting on pallets. I don't go to the hassle of bricks. It was at some point a little cost prohibitive. These are out yards in somebody else's fields. The pallets are free. We go and take a drive around. We have our certain lucky spots. Different businesses use pallets and they don't care. One is like an automotive supply, one is an electrical supply, and that's where we get them. And we have a lot of termites down here in the south, so I get about a 2-year use out of them. I probably, well, no, even if I moved the hives, I couldn't move the pallet, because even after a year they start to deteriorate, which is, you know, again, another good thing for me. I can either burn them, which I haven't, or pile them up and termites eat them down, just, you know, as a natural course of events. All my boxes are 10 frames, and now I am starting to run some Nucs. I like the Nucs. The Nucs are, just like they say, they're bee factories, and Nucs are not meaning just 4 frames or 5 frames. They're stacked, where you can stack them. They are definitely bee factories. They're definitely a good spot to maybe put some old queens, or a unsure, if you're not sure how she's going to act, put her in there, let them run. It's easy enough to, if you put an old queen in there and then she finally fails you, she's not in a big 10 frame that then gets robbed out or hive beetled and wax moth and all the other nonsense. Yeah, I definitely get wax moth in a hive that has dwindled and left. I like catching swarms, which is a nice, generally they're my swarms though, so it's more of a challenge for me to get her back in her box. But before I stopped hunting bees, we would have 40 swarm traps up, or actually, yeah, about 40 swarm traps up, and it's a fun gig to get into. I've been beekeeping for about 20 years. 2003 I got into it. So what's that, 17, 18 years. And we started with 2 hives, and we were way up in the far reaches of Maine. It's something that you get into, and it's really fun. So if you do start with 2 hives. If you're a beginner, start with 2 hives, because then you can really learn from them. We're not just trying to get you to buy a lot of bees. We're trying to get you to really watch your hives and learn from one hive to the other and have a comparison. Yeah, I get stung. I get stung a lot. I choose not to wear too much equipment because it gets really hot out here. I do put on equipment when they're hitting me hard or have to go in the cooler weather. But I do have my teenage kids that help me out in the field, and it's, you know, 10 hives is nothing to sneeze at. I don't know what I would do if I had more than 200 hives. I would like to, but It's always a matter of equipment, equipment, equipment. So, okay, so I went over my boxes. I used lids that are made of hardy board. And the hardy board lids are cut right to the hive. So when I do move hives from one yard to the other, I can stack my hives one right next to the other and there's no gap, no shift. I can, the lid is more of a migratory lid. So if you're a beekeeper who's just looking at new equipment, you know, I don't use the recessed lids. I use just the hardy board, which is just that migratory type lid. I don't use inner covers because I had found that once I got into Mississippi, the inner lid gives hive beetle another place to run, and I almost quit beekeeping because of hive beetle, because it was such a shock coming from up north to down south, and the absolute disgusting nature of hive beetle. And now I have it under control in a number of ways, and one of them is the lid and no inner lid. Give them less places to run and you'll have less hive beetle. Give them a full population, you'll have less hive beetle. Put them in full sun and you'll have less hive beetle. And those are some of the big things. Today I came out with the sun, and I have been putting out some dry pollen. The dry pollen is because I'm getting ready to go into queen rearing in just about a month, and so I want populations high for both nucs and for builders. But I do have lots of pollen baskets going in, so the fact that they're taking dry pollen is a good mix with the natural pollen. And you can see they're being nice, they're not really hitting, whereas in some cases they could actually hit you a little bit more in this yard. But they're nice busy hives today. But I did notice that the propolis builders are on certain areas and building and trying to fill those cracks. I do feed, but if I have customers with new hives and things like that, you might want to feed as a beginner into the spring and supplement because it's a small hive with nuc or a package. But what I find is a lot of people are feeding just as a matter of course, and these are not your pets. These are animals that live off the land, and you should be seeking the ability to let them winter with no feed. It's not something that I agree with, that you just feed as a matter of course. And if you have to feed as a matter of course, that's a different matter. But you also then have to look at, maybe in your area you shouldn't be keeping bees, or you should be able to move them to follow some sort of flow. But that's just my humble opinion, and you can take that as you will. I am basically treatment free, and I say basically because I think the treatment free people have pretty strict adherence to no feeding, no traps, no essential oils. So I use no harsh chemicals. I use some essential oils. I don't do mite treatments, basically of any kind. And what? They're getting more and more active. It's been overcast and they have just come out of their hives, but they've been really busy. And I think that being treatment free and using survivors, they really give you a future in bees and beekeeping. I don't think that they know that treatments for bees with the mites develop resistance, and so what's the point? You're going to have to come up with a new chemical, a new way, and even the so-called organic treatments, they leave some type of residue in your wax, in your hive, or if mixed with previous treatments, you know, that's not always a good thing because the residues can mix. They have different studies on different types of residues. I think oxalic acid is supposed to dissipate within like 60 days. Again, you know, that's my opinion. So while I'm basically treatment free, I do think that there is a treatment for mites, and that's what I do. I raise VSH queens. So if you want to put a non-treatment treatment in your hive, use VSH queens. I have very little problems with mites in my hives. I grow my apiary. I don't, obviously everyone loses hives at some point, but it's not to mites. My mite problem is not a problem. The queens are SMR VSH. They actually uncap the reproductive mites. They smell them, feel them, I don't know, and break the cycle. So while your brood break will break a cycle of mites, these VSH queens will break a cycle. And not all VSH queens are SMR. So that's one of the things that you should think about, and of course buy my queens, and think about what kind of queen is in your hive and what kind of actions are they doing. Hygienics is really important, and there's hygienics that are natural and then they're bred to be even stronger. It's something to think about as far as your treatments, because I know everyone's crazy about mites, and as well they should be, but we should be looking to more natural solutions other than a chemical treatment or an outside treatment to kind of just stop it for now. Stopping it for now tends to prolong the problem. So I hope that answered some of your questions and gives you a little look around in my apiary. So tell your friends, subscribe, come back and see me, and happy beekeeping.